Okay, I'd like to call tonight's regular meeting of council to order. Recommendation that the regular meeting of council, that's council to order. Recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of March 6, 2017 be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Nish, second by Councillor Kinney. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Item 3A, recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting of February 20th, 2017 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ranhawa, seconded by Councillor Nish. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Item 3B, recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting of February 20th, 2017 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Kinney. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And item 3C, recommendation that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of February 20th, 2017 be received. Moved by Councillor Nish, seconded by Councillor Ranhawa. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, well, item 6A, a report from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the 2016-2017 budget presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are presenting the 2017 municipal budget for the City of Prince Rupert. For the benefit of the Council, the viewers in the gallery and at home, we've prepared a presentation to accompany the report to Council. The report itself is for information purposes, and it is requested that Council defer direction with respect to the 5-year financial plan and related tax rate bylaw until after public consultation and final BC assessment numbers are received. Staff plan to have 2 public consultation meetings, the first on March 15th and the second on March 20th. Both consultation meetings will be held here in Council Chambers. Our presentation order is as follows. We would like to take about 5 minutes to review some of our unique services and revenue challenges, which will be a recap of last year given they are still very much persistent. After, we will present the budget requirements and the impact to property taxpayers. And finally, we will outline our plans for public consultation. As mentioned in both the 2015 and 2016 budget season, an independent report on the capacity of the ferry service identified our airport as one of the most challenging to access in the industrialized world. We are also likely one of the few municipalities in BC to have to subsidize their own transportation to our airport. Most are accessible by road and light rail and are entirely user-pay systems. Although many of our neighbours and visitors benefit from the proximity of our airport, they only pay on a per-user basis. Our municipality pays not only a user fee, but also subsidizes the operation through taxation. 2017 predicts a subsidization of $1 million. In 2004, the province of British Columbia capped the major industrial mill rate for all municipalities with a qualifying port, export, import property. Therefore, the city can only charge flat mill rates on industry that is considered eligible. All of the City of Prince Rupert's major industrial operating activity qualifies for these capped rates. These flat mill rates are levied on properties with assessed values that depreciate, meaning they go down every year. A flat mill rate on a declining assessed value results in less taxation received by the city. In effect, there is diminishing revenue received from export-import industries yearly, and the only way to collect the same amount of industrial taxes each year would be if industry invested in their property annually, resulting in the value of the property staying the same. The province in part recognized that by cutting the municipal industrial mill rate virtually in half in 2004, when the legislation was implemented, would cause an enormous spike in the other tax classes' taxes. So they pay us the competitiveness grant as a means to offset part of the impact. This grant is only adjusted for inflation as determined by the Ministry of Finance. It does not compensate for the depreciated difference realized every year. Since 2013, the grant has increased only $53,000. Finance takes this grant into account every year before the taxation need is calculated. Here's an example of the tax cap legislation as it impacts you. Let's assume a constant 5-year annual budget shortfall of $10 million before taxes. Because the city has to balance its budget, it must bring in the $10 million every year, and so the last resort is property taxation. In our example, the residential, business, and light industrial tax classes contribute $7 million in year 1, represented by the dark blue part of the graph. The major industrial class, represented by the light blue part of the graph, contributes the other $3 million. In year 2, the city again needs to bring in taxes of $10 million, which represents no increase in need. But the industrial assessment has declined, and so with the cap, the major industrial group can only be levied $2.75 million in tax. The only other source of tax income is from the remaining tax classes, residential, business, and light industrial. Therefore, their tax bill goes up from $7 million collectively in year 1 to $7.25 million in year 2. The same deficiency continues to happen in years 3, 4, and 5 because of declining industrial assessments and no new investment. In our example, in year 5, the other tax classes are now paying $8 million in tax, whereas in year 1 they were paying $7 million, and the industrial properties are now paying $2 million in tax, whereas in year 1 they were paying $3 million. So you can see the conundrum caused when council can't set rates for all the tax classes. It essentially transfers the burden onto the other classes, and that's to maintain the same $10 million level of tax requirement. It doesn't take into account inflationary costs such as wages, services, supplies, and capital increases, which would be borne entirely by the other tax classes. This is a large contributing factor behind why taxes on the residential, business, and light industrial classes in Prince Rupert continues to increase without any noticeable change in services provided.
May I ask a question here? Ms. Baumann, I was wondering, so if we had to increase over that time period from $10 million to $12 million, let's just say, would the amount paid by major industries remain the same, and it would just be the other sectors? So what you would see is you'd see the light blue major industry contributions remaining exactly as they are now, but the 100% of the increase in taxes would have to be borne by the residential, business, light industry.
You are correct. For clarity, all 4 of the industrial companies benefiting from the provincial tax caps pay the taxes the city bills. The problem is the province has placed a limit on the property tax rate the city can use to collect taxes. Now on to our budget.
Can I ask one question? If we were to send them a tax bill for what they should pay, what would happen? Would they just wiggle out of it and say it's the cap and not pay it?
We actually wouldn't be able to send them a tax bill for any more than what the cap is. Included in the operations budget are capital works and purchases funded in part by operating revenues. The balance are funded through dividends from Legacy Inc., grants, reserves, and surplus. Examples of capital works and purchases included in the 2017 budget include the repaving of 3rd Avenue, Phase 1 and 2 of the Waterworks project, and expansion of the West Berm at the landfill. We are partway through planning for major projects initiatives. All of our work on planning for major projects has been made possible through the capacity funding by Legacy Inc. This year's budget includes the same level of funding, meaning there is no impact to the taxpayers for this planning process. City staff are not proposing any expansion to services for 2017. After taking into account expected revenues and increases in expense items like contractual wage increases, increased library need, and an adjustment to expected airline traffic given Hawk Air no longer flies out of Prince Rupert, the city has an operating deficit of $160,000. To balance the budget, an increase to the mill rate of 1.5% is recommended. We understand there is some confusion as to what the mill rate is. It is the number the city uses to calculate property taxes each year. The number represents how much you will pay per $1,000 of assessed value. For example, 1 mil is $1 per 1,000 assessed value. It is not a reference to the old pulp mill. Before we get into how the recommendation affects the taxpayer, we will go over how the percent increase affects the mill rate. This is how it works. Let's use the following example for simplicity. Suppose we start with a mill rate of 10, and the proposed increase to the mill rate is 2.5%. This would result in 10 times 2.5%, which equals 0.25. We then take our beginning mill rate of 10 and add the calculated amount of 0.25, which equals 10.25. In our example, that would be our final proposed mill rate. A mill rate percent increase of 2.5% is not the beginning mill rate of 10 plus 2.5. Here's the impact of the recommended 1.5% increase to the existing beginning mill rate for the residential class for 2017. We start with the mill rate of 6.38583. 1.5% of this rate is 0.09579. We add our beginning mill rate to the calculated value and arrive at our final proposed 2017 residential class mill rate of 6.48162. This slide shows that our mill rates have decreased over the past 5 years and again for 2017, even after the recommendation. The reason this has happened is because assessed values have increased, which means we recalculate the mill rate to ensure we don't take in more money than we require. So essentially, the multiplier gets reduced. To calculate the impact to a property owner of the recommended mill rate, one needs to compare the 2016 general property tax to the amount calculated for 2017. The 2016 general property tax can be found on the 2016 property tax notice as shown in the red circles. The formula to calculate the general levy is on this slide. Take 2017's assessed value divided by 1,000 times the 2017 proposed mill rate. This is the municipal property tax for 2017. Compare this to the 2016 general property tax as found on the previous slide. This will inform you whether the taxes have gone up or down on your home. We have provided all of the proposed mill rates on the next slide for viewers to calculate the potential impact to them, whether it be their home or their business property. These are the proposed municipal rates for 2017 after implementing the recommended increase to balance the 2017 budget. I will pause here for a moment for our viewers.
Sorry again. I just want, could you go back that slide, Ms. Bowman? So those are the caps. So we can't charge more than 27.5% or 22.5%, depending which year that the major industrial was developed. And that's why we could have a mill rate on major industrial off-port property of 52 mill rate 52, and whereas we can only have a mill rate in the capped or port areas of 27. So that's what the difference is between 52 and 27. Is that correct?
It's any property that qualifies for the Port Property Tax Act. So it actually doesn't need to be located on port property. It has to be a qualifying import-export terminal. So it could be located on anybody else's land as well, just as long as it qualifies for under that legislation. But yes, we cannot change that rate at all. That is provincially imposed and mandated.
But that would be the difference between the 57, or sorry, the 52 and the 27. That would be the difference.
Yes, that's right. One qualifies for the Act, the other rates would not. So a manufacturing company would not qualify for the Act and benefit from the reduced capped rate.
Councillor Cunningham?
One thing you've got missing from there is the birth corridor, which is capped at 11.50, isn't it?
No, it's not a rate. The birth corridor is an exemption on assessed value. So if you had assessed value of 100 million and 50 million of it is considered birth corridor qualifying improvements, that 50 million would be exempt right off the bat and not taxable. So it's the taxable portion that is actually qualifies for the rate, the capped rate.
And what's that capped rate?
It would depend on if it was a property that was put in before 2004.
That goes to those caps, because I was under the understanding the birth corridor, like Dubai World or Mar Terminals as it was before, had a different cap rate than major industry.
No, just a large portion at the time when we were first talking about it, 50% of their total assessed value was birth corridor. The amount of birth corridor might not be 50% anymore. It could be 60, it could be it depends on the total assessed value.
So then if it was 50%, you would be cutting the major industry if it was built after 2002, 1, 2, 3?
I believe it's anything that was after 2004.
2004. So that would be cutting that major industrial cap rate at 22.5 and a half anyway. Because if you're taking $100 million and only capping or only taxing it on 50 because 50 was exempt, you're cutting the $100 million in half and bringing it down to 50. So it's still being, even though it's being capped at 22.5, you're still only paying half of the 100 million.
It's only on the assessable property. So the taxable assessable property, if it was $50 million, would be levied depending on the year that it was put in, 22.5 or 27.5 would be multiplied by the assessable taxable property. So the birth exemption doesn't get any rate applied to it.
What I'm getting at though is if you had a $100 million piece of property, after the birth exemption, the taxes you would pay on it would be only 22.5. But if you were to pay the cap on the 100 million, it would be 45 million, but in reality you'd only be paying 22.5 on 50 million. So it's cutting the 100 million in half one way or the other. So you're still paying less than the 22.5 because of the 50% exemption.
Yes, it's whatever portion is taxable is what the rate is assessed on. We have provided the effect to a homeowner with an average assessed value in both 2016 and 2017. The proposed increase to balance the budget results in an additional $38 per year. This is just over $3 per month or 10 cents per day. As mentioned on a previous slide, the proposed residential mill rate is lower than last year. To show in real dollars the effect this has on a homeowner provided the value of their home stayed the same, we have provided the following table. This table is in a range of dollar values where the majority of residential assessed value levels exist. For simplicity, we have separated them in $50,000 increments. For example, if a homeowner's value in 2016 was $200,000, the 2016 municipal taxes paid were $1,350. At the proposed 2017 rate, the taxes are $1,296, or $54 less than in 2016. So if a homeowner's value stayed the same between 2016 and 2017, because the mill rate is lower, the homeowner can expect to pay less tax in 2017. Many home values did increase during the year. However, some only marginally. Others stayed the same and others decreased. This is why it is important to calculate the expected value of taxes individually to determine the impact to each property owner. It is not a simple statement that everyone's taxes may be going up. The City recognizes that the property taxes are not based on means to pay. Therefore, we want to make homeowners aware of some programs that help to aid those that may qualify. The provincial government offers residents the homeowner grant and tax deferral programs. These programs are available to reduce taxes paid and defer the tax payment through a loan that is recovered at the time of sale. Please contact City Hall for details of each program or look on your property tax notice. BC Assessment will release the revised roll on March 31st, which will take into account any appeals to assessed value. It is expected that changes are likely based on the revised roll, and any reductions to assessed values may impact the proposed mill rates. Staff is planning to have 2 public consultation opportunities. The first is to be held in Council Chambers at 7 p.m. on March 15th. It will also be broadcast on Channel 10 and Channel 310 and at www.princerupert.ca/live. During this consultation, we will have the same electronic polling from the audience at home and in Council Chambers. The second public consultation opportunity is to be held during the regular meeting of Council here in Chambers on March 20th, 2017. Thank you to Council and our community for listening. We look forward to the consultation process to be held this month.
Thank you. Before you go back to your other seat, any questions from Council? Councilor Reinhardt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like you explain here, most houses these days, they increase, their prices increase from 25-30% compared to last year. So their property tax will go up, or even we don't increase 1.5%, their property tax will go up automatically because their price is already gone up.
Yes, even if we didn't propose an increase to balance the budget, their property taxes would increase because their assessed value had increased more than the average.
And also, even if it is, in the end, we do 1.5, it doesn't mean everybody's paying more taxes, correct?
That's correct.
Some people's actually will go down.
It's correct. It depends on what their assessed values were from one year to the next.
Not a blanket tax for everybody.
And that's why we want to make it clear to everybody how to calculate the impact to themselves.
Right.
Do you have any numbers like how many people will pay less and how many people will go up? Their property tax go up?
We could certainly look into that for sure. I haven't done that analysis on that detailed level, but we could certainly do it.
Councillor Nish?
Just one thing to point out to residents would be with the homeowners grant, it was the number I think you had pointed out was I believe $170,000. So if your house is at $170,000 value or less, because of the homeowners grant, your taxes would still stay the same because of the homeowners grant.
It's important that people look whether or not they qualify for the homeowners grant, so you can't claim it on any other property that's not your own residence.
Councillor Morrow?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just had a quick question, and I apologize if you don't have the number right off the top of your head, but I'm wondering, in your recommendation, you want to wait for direction until we get the final assessed values. What was about the dollar impact on the change in assessed values after appeals last year? Was it a tangible change?
No, it wasn't a tangible change to make much of a difference at all. There was some appeals, but fortunately we didn't have to go down the road of proposing an increase, even though last year we had a 0%.
Other questions? Councillor Thorperson?
Are you going to make those slides available?
We could certainly post them online. Yep.
Other questions? Councillor Morrow?
Just one more follow-up one, in particular on the, just in your report here about the Ridley Island tax sharing agreement. I just was hoping for some clarification because I understand the 2-year agreement that we signed expires at the end of this calendar year, 2017, and the agreement, from my understanding, was that the province would mediate an agreement moving forward. Is that due to be negotiated to start and be effective January 1st, or is that due to be negotiated once the current agreement expires at the end of the year?
There was no real hard and fast timeline for us to have it negotiated by, but we are actually in the process of having a conversation with the province, and I understand that they've been speaking with the District of Port Ed as well to begin the process of actually having a negotiation. So hopefully we would have something arrived at by the end of this year, so it would just roll over naturally.
Thanks very much. The reason I ask is just so that would then obviously have to be calculated into next fiscal if we're to negotiate a settlement before that point.
That's correct. It would only affect next budgeting year.
Any final questions? Okay, so the recommendation that Council receive this report for information purposes and delay any decision to staff until after public consultation and final BC assessment values are released. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Niche. Further discussion? All those in favour? Any opposed? Motion's carried. I just want to say thank you very much to our staff for, I know it's been many weekends and crunching of numbers the last few weeks, and it's been a busy time, so thank you very much for all the hard work you and your staff have been doing on the budget, and especially to get us down to as low as possible numbers for the taxpayers. Okay, moving on. Report from our approving officer, report regarding a proposal to stratify the 2000-2012 Seal Cove Circle. Welcome, Mr. Fucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in August of 2016, the city received an application for stratification of the duplex located at 2000-2012 Seal Cove Circle. The intent is to convert the existing duplex into 2 strata residential units. According to the BC Strata Property Act, stratification of existing buildings require the approval of Municipal Council. In regard to compliance with municipal bylaws, inspections, servicing, and access, this conversion satisfies all the requirements. Therefore, the recommendation is to approve the stratification. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from Council? Oh, so the recommendation is that Council receive the attached application and to approve the strata conversion be granted. You have a question? Okay.
I was wondering if you could explain to me, and I'm embarrassed for my ignorance, but is a duplex not normally owned by 2 separate people?
No, not normally. So normally one person either owns the duplex and then rents out the other half, or owns it and as an absentee landlord rents out both of them. In order to own half of a duplex, you either need to have a property line going through the center of it, which can be two titled lots, or a strata conversion like this.
And what's the difference between a strata conversion and running the property line down the middle?
The difference is a strata has, it does have a property line down the middle, but it's a strata, so there's strata bylaws, which they've submitted, and there is only a single utility going to the property. So if they went and wanted to subdivide the property into 2 single fee simple lots with a common wall down the center, they would have to do 2 separate utilities going to each property. But since this is a strata conversion and originally the property was a one owner build, there is a single utility going to the property, and then on private property the utilities split into going to the 2 houses there. They're the duplex. So what that strata bylaw does is it puts rules and regulations, specifications, all that about who pays for what, joint ownership of the utility, payment. It talks about upkeep of maintenance and so on and so forth.
And so does that mean that that property is just one piece of property for the purposes of taxation, for the purposes of Prince Rupert, although it has 2 different owners? How does that work?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure. I'll maybe ask Mr. Long if he knows.
Yeah, I believe they end up with 2 PIN numbers, and therefore they'd have both be obligated to make the payments.
Well, they do have 2 PID numbers, so they do have 2 PID numbers. So therefore, yeah, they would be strata titled lots. Yeah.
Okay. Move. Are you asking a question? Or are you moving?
More of a statement.
Okay.
So I was having a little discussion with Richard. I had a question for him about this earlier, and I have an issue with a duplex on my street where it's owned by 2 different owners, and he kind of clarified this more for me. But with the strata titling, I think it actually protects people more, because the duplex that is down the street from me, one person is trying to sell this unit. One unit, and the other person on the other side is an absentee landlord who is not looking after their property, and the person is trying to sell the other side, and they are having a hell of a time trying to sell it because of the condition of the other property. So by stratifying it, it actually gives somebody some teeth, where if somebody's not looking after the other side, they could probably go after them in court and make them pay for necessary repairs so that their building is not falling apart. So it's probably, as much as I think that it would be better to have one person own both sides of a duplex, this is probably the better way to do it versus having it just 2 separate pieces of property. That way you have really no teeth to go after the person if they're not looking after the other side. So I think this is probably a good move on our part to approve this.
So, are you moving the recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, second report from the Director of Operations regarding the Schwatland Raw Water Pipeline Project Award.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the recommendation for this report is to award the pipeline project to Clado Construction. So Council has set the replacement of the water supply infrastructure as a top priority. This project will see the installation of a new raw water supply line that is buried under an access road for all-weather access to the dam. As this raw water supply line is over 100 years old, it is past any reasonable life expectancy. Therefore, this project will not only upgrade and replace the system for the community, but service the future potential growth. The City conducted an open tender process and received 9 compliant bids. These were reviewed by the Operations Department and L&M Engineering, with both recommending to award the contract to the lowest and confirmed capable bid provided by Clado Construction for $6,929,214.24. City Council has approved the expenditure for this project in the 2017 capital budget. The Operations Department has worked with the Finance Department to reallocate approved funds within that existing budget to virtually eliminate the shortfall. We have also identified that there may be an opportunity to source gravel near the construction area on the Schwatland side, which could save up to $800,000. Additionally, we will continually work on cost-saving opportunities with the associated contractor to shorten or lessen the shortfall. The recommendation is to award the pipeline project to Clado Construction. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Moreau. Discussion?
Sorry, is Clado local?
No, Clado is not local. They're from Fort St. John.
And I guess the engineering department is convinced that that they understand the nature of the rock, etc., that's going to need to be removed. That they're not going to be surprised by muskeg and rock as other contractors have.
Yes, Clado is experienced working in the remote wilderness up near Fort St. John. It's somewhat like what we have here. They've also worked all near Prince George and just in really remote areas doing pipeline projects. So they have a good feel and understanding for this project, and also they have visited the site and walked it extensively.
Councillor Cunningham?
So you said the lowest and most capable. were they the lowest as well as the most capable, or was it a combination of the two? And the other question I'll throw at you so I can sit back and listen is, do they have intentions, or have they indicated in any way they're going to hire locally as much as possible, or are they going to be bringing people in from out of town?
So the first question was, sorry, what was the first question again?
If the lowest and most capable bid. So I just wondered if it was a combination of the two, or if they were the lowest bid.
So they were the lowest bid, and they are capable of doing the work. So that's what we do, is we look at their experience, and we look at the and the cost. So they are capable of doing the project. They have all the right equipment. They have the right know-how, and they were the lowest bid. So that's who we recommended going forward with. So there was not a bid that was lower than that one. They were the lowest bid, and they were capable of doing the work. And there is going to be a mix of people that their crew will be coming down, and they will look at hiring, offsetting with some local hires.
Councillor Moreau?
Thanks very much for your presentation. Just a quick question on the identified potential savings on gravel. I'm assuming that 600 to 800,000, wherever the dust may fall, that would be deducted then off the contract award numbers that are provided here.
That is correct. We strategically made the bid process so that we can adjust the rock volumes and rock sort of cost of rock if we needed to, and if we sourced it on that side. So we've found some potential bore sites. Unfortunately, it snowed before we could get really in there and take a look to make sure that they had the right quantity that we needed. There's some other things that we need to do with archaeological assessments and consultation process, so we're hoping to streamline that, and if everything works out, then we could definitely see those savings, and those savings will be replicated for Phase 2, and there wouldn't be any rock in Phase 3, but definitely in Phase 2 as well.
Councillor Thorkelson, then, or Roundhowe, then Thorkelson.
Is there any timeline to finish this project?
Absolutely. The timeline, once they get on site, is 145 days of scheduled work. That's what they've put in their bid, which fits within our timeline. We want to have the project complete by, we're hoping by mid-November, is to have it completed this year. Just because there is associated pumping that goes along with this work, and so there's a cost with that, and so on and so forth. So it's a difficult project because we have a short construction season there, so we had to make sure that the contractor was able to get there, do the work, and get out in a quick amount of time.
Councillor Thorkelson.
Have we budgeted for both? This question to Ms. Bauman, actually. We budgeted both for Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the water project?
Yes, we have.
And this is Phase 1? And can Phase 2 go on at the same time, or how does that fit in with the budgeting of Phase 1?
No, Phase 2 cannot start until after Phase 1 is complete. So Phase 1 is the center part of the project. It's the replacement of the pipeline and getting a access road up to the dam. Phase 2 is the actual construction of the dam. So we've started the detailed design of the dam, and we're, I would say, about 30-35% complete on that. And then once we are waiting to hear if we've gotten a grant for that dam project. Once we know if we've secured it or not, we can move into scheduling that work directly after the completion of the pipeline and access road.
And those Phase 2 project and 3 actually were submitted with the Clean Water Fund application that we recently did in November, I believe. So we'll know if maybe later this year if we're awarded those. Any other questions from council? I just wanted to quickly ask too, so since we'll be replacing this pipe, just maybe explanation to the public around shifting the water supply to the secondary water supply and the pumping and things like that, so people are aware. Maybe you can provide an explanation for them.
Oh, sure. So we have two water sources. One is our primary water source that is at Woodworth Lake. Woodworth Lake is essentially a gravity system. It doesn't require any pumping, and it's a free system, which is absolutely fabulous. So when we are doing maintenance or when we're replacing the pipeline, like we're proposing to do, we have to go to our secondary source, and our secondary source is Schwatlands Lake, and that does require pumping. It's pretty much at sea level, so it requires pumping to every part of town. That source is basically just a direct flow through from Woodworth Lake, and so it's the same water, it's just lower down on the mountain.
So it's just temporary until the pipeline's replaced.
Correct. Okay. Yes. Yeah, and it will be for several months.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? Sorry, did we move the motion, Mr. Mandrick? Oh, we did? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And final report regarding the Hayes Creek Riparian, is that how you say it? Area Rehabilitation Project.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this project is for the Hayes Creek Riparian Area Rehabilitation Project, and what that is what we're doing is we're requesting approval to submit a letter of support in conjunction with the North Coast Skeena First Nations Stewardship Society for the feasibility study. This study is going to look at taking out the dilapidated rock walls that channel Hayes Creek, bring them back and create a sort of a riparian foreshore with some rocks and some educational signage. At this point, there's no financial consideration from the city. This would be a grant that is through DFO and the North Coast Skeena First Nations Stewardship Society. So we are requesting that Council get behind a letter of support to assist.
Moved by Councillor Thorkelson. Right? Sure. Oh, do we have a question? Sorry? Okay, sorry. I thought you were moving that. But, and then question? Yeah.
My question is, what rock walls are they talking about? Like, do we have, is part of this grant to create a proposal to bring to council? Because I certainly support that. I'm kind of wondering about which rock wall, because the only real rock wall that I'm aware of, but there may be others, is the one that surrounds the part of the park that is further down the walkway, but it's certainly along the walkway that below the Kinhut, that park, and that's the only rock wall that I'm aware of. There might be others, but I was wondering if this is just in order to come up for a plan for us to look at, because certainly that is a nice park area, and if it can be made nicer, that would be great. But it's also quite swampy, and I would hate to just reduce it to a large swamp.
So these rock walls are hand-placed rock walls, and they start just down from the skateboard park or Kinhut, and they actually go all the way up to past the arena. So they're on both sides, channeling the flow through there. The areas around the abutments for the bridges and for the arena, and probably tighter areas just outside the Civic Center, will probably have to be maintained as rock walls. But the area below the Kinhut area and where the signage is on the opposite side, there are opportunities to make that into more of a riparian area with large rocks. But what we're looking at here is a study and sort of a design for that. It's not actually to do the work at this time. So what this money or this grant is to hire a consultant with a biologist to look at what would be best for the community, best for that system right there, put together a plan, and then we would have a shelf-ready plan that in the future, if there was some partnering that could go on, or maybe there's another grant that we could use to facilitate the work and really make the park a better place. And education is really a big part of this grant process with North Coast Skeena.
Councillor Rana?
Yeah, I will make motion to.
Okay, moved by Councillor Rana, second by Councillor Moreau. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Pucci. Okay, reports, questions, inquiries from members of council. Councillor Rana?
Yeah, I know Basil is not very cooperating, but any word for the traffic lights, anything when they're going to fix? Because lots of people questioning that.
Yeah, Mr. Long?
Yeah, we're still waiting on highways, hoping that they will speed it up. Obviously, they're in the same boat as we are with the snow, but anyway, that's what we've been waiting for, is highways to get on with the job.
My understanding is they're actually having to relocate the actual foundation of the light now, right?
They have some big challenges there, and they have to build some special arms and all kinds of things to actually do the job. So.
Okay. Councillor Thorkelson?
Yeah, when I was coming to the meeting today, I saw an elderly woman who was crossing one of the crosswalks just down at 2nd. She was trying to get to the bus stop down there, and she was having a very difficult time crossing the road, and I actually stopped and got out and helped her across because she looked like she was going to fall. And I was wondering, I know that our city crews are working all out, that we have all of them engaged in snow removal. What I was hoping was that maybe some of the merchants or businesses in town can help pedestrians out by not only cleaning in front of their stores, but also cleaning into the crosswalk so that the access from the sidewalk to the crosswalk is clear, so that particularly elderly people, or there's even people downtown with buggies that need to find that the sidewalks are nice, but as soon as they try to cross the streets, they're finding that there's a lot of slush and heavy snow that it's hard to either walk through or push buggies through. So I know that I've seen our city staff out there cleaning, but I think as the day goes on, the snow gets pushed around, and I was just hoping that we could ask the merchants to keep it clear so pedestrians can walk up and down the sidewalks and cross the street unimpeded.
Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
And on that note, snow removal, we've had this discussion before. There are vacant buildings, vacant lots in this town that the owners are not clearing the snow on. And it's not just on the corner of 3rd and McBride, but there's other buildings that are vacant in this town where the owners aren't doing it now. I know they can either be fined or we can hire somebody, so I suggest we go out and hire a private contractor and just give these people the bill. You know, they're just sitting back and not worrying about it or caring who has to walk up and down that sidewalk. And that's a prime example of crossing the crosswalk possibly, but I see people struggling up and down the sidewalk sometimes. The old Totem Theater, basically around 3rd and McBride is bad. And there's lots of other areas in town too where you have vacant buildings or vacant lots. They're owned by somebody, and no one's clearing the snow. So if it takes the city to have to hire a private contractor to go and do that, because I know our crews are working flat out right now, and they don't need any more work. So if that's the case, I think we should be looking at that, because according to the weather forecast, we're going to be getting another week or two of snow here, and I think it's something we should look into.
Any other reports from Council? Councillor Morrow?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to report back. On Saturday night, the Mayor and I attended the Chamber of Commerce Business Excellence Awards, and I just wanted to publicly congratulate all of the winners and the nominees, and just comment on the fact that the production quality and value was absolutely fantastic. People were calling it the Oscars of Prince Rupert, which is actually a pretty good description. Very inspirational messages from a lot of the entrepreneurs, whether they were long-standing business owners, commenting on the loyalty of their customers and the resiliency that it takes to survive some of the tough times, or whether it was some of the really young entrepreneurs talking about kind of the sense of community and the support that they get in their startups. So it was just a very, very inspirational night. And kind of the main message I took away was, for some of the people that like to say, I'll believe it when I see it, I mean, the time has come to stop saying that, because there's so much going on in Prince Rupert. that people are just kind of sleeping on some of the fantastic things that are happening behind the scenes. So that's just a message that I wanted to get out there is we need to move past the point of saying I'll believe it when I see it, because times have started to change, things are looking up, people are optimistic, and it's just a really exciting time to be in business in Prince Rupert.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Councillor Kinney?
Sorry. One thing I'd like to give a lot of praise to is Veronica for the mill video that you did, and it was great. Everybody was impressed. They're all talking about it. And thanks for the good work, girl.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Renha, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned.